is that the gravitational pull is
like that?
a form of government. That's why the sun has the single biggest gravitational pull, kind of regulating all of theirs, but each individual planet has their own respective gravitational pull. So they can pull in their own like ideas and whatnot. That's why they're all connected, but they all have their separation. Each individual wants to be
or that. All right, I'm going to stop you guys there because it sounds as if our conversation is done. So, today's a big day. Today's a big day. I want you to take 20 seconds and talk to your partner about what's something you did in life that you enjoy doing now that, God, you sucked at so bad at the beginning. What's something in life that you enjoy doing now that you sucked really bad at the beginning? Take 20 seconds to talk to your partner. What is it? What is it? There you go. Read All right. Now, tell me, who has something that they sucked at the beginning, but now they really enjoy doing and they've improved? Well, yeah, go ahead. Volleyball. You were terrible at it, and now you're a little bit less terrible. That's awesome. That's fine. You guys are undefeated, so it's not volleyball girls in here. I like it. Good. Volleyball. So you did it at the beginning. You were like, man, I'm terrible at this. You have to go, the front of your head isn't that good, but it's better than the back of your head. Good. Volleyball. What else? Who else? Talk to me. What else you got?
Similar to Kenya, but for me it's soccer.
Soccer. All right, nobody's born good at soccer. Right? You start, you suck, you're tripping over the ball, you're making a fool of yourself. That's still how I look playing soccer? It's okay? Yeah, absolutely. Soccer. Good. What else? Angel, you got one that I thought was cool.
Staying up late.
Staying up late. At the beginning, you stay up late, and then you can't get up in the morning. You're all tired the next day, but eventually you train your body to get a little better, having a little less sleep, and you're in good shape. Cool. So today, I ask you this because today America is going to make a government. And it's the first time we're going to do this, and holy crap, it's going to be terrible. Terrible! Because when you're doing something from scratch, when you're doing something without any real directions, chances are the first time you do it, it's not going to be very good. But maybe time 2, you take your lessons from time 1 and you try things a little differently. Question for you, who's ever cooked something before in your life or baked something, yeah? If I told you right now, ready for this? I want you to go home right now and make us chocolate chip cookies. Can you do it? Can you do it from scratch?
Store and buy some cookies.
Why not? Why can't you do it? You don't know? You don't know how to make them. Okay, how about this? And I said, just go home. Here's all the ingredients. Go make the cookies. Could you make them?
They'd be bad.
They'd be bad. Because let me tell you, we have the ingredients. We identified the ingredients yesterday. The ingredients are republicanism, natural rights, separation of power, limited government. All of our ingredients are there. But if you don't know how much to put in for each, this fool puts way too much flour and his cookies are all this tall, they rise super high. Or he doesn't put enough flour and his cookies are flat and burned. Or the recipe calls for a little bit of salt, but he's like, I don't need salt for cookies, that's stupid. Why would I put salt in cookies? I don't want salty cookies. He puts no salt and then, you see my point? Because just having the ingredients doesn't mean you can make a recipe. The ingredients means you have the right things to put in, but if you don't know how much of things to put in, then you're still just flying blind. So I want you to, yesterday's conversation was intentional. I did that on purpose so that you guys made your whole list of ingredients. But just because you have the right list of ingredients does not mean that you're actually going to make the right recipe. How much is too much sugar? Oh, y'all got diabetes and whatnot. How much is too much sugar? How much is too much flour? How many chocolate chips should I? So all these other questions, same things that happen with the government. How much power should the government have? How much should we limit the government's power? How much power should we give to people? how should we separate power within the government? So all those ingredients you guys listed yesterday are going to play a role, but my point that I want you guys to understand as we start today is just because you have the right ingredients does not mean you can come up with a really good cookie recipe. Now, back to your question, Mr. Garcia. If I gave you a recipe and I said you need this many cups of X, this many cups of Y, this many cups of Z, and then you're going to mix them all together, you're going to put them in little balls, you're going to put them in the oven for this long, could you do that?
Yeah.
I doubt it, but yes, maybe you could, but yeah, my point is that you could do that because you had a recipe. Likewise, if I gave you all the ingredients and I said go make cookies, and you made them and they came out but they weren't quite right, do you think you could figure out what needed to be fixed? Maybe, maybe. Would you come up with a better cookie recipe round 2? Interesting. All right. And now we're thinking about like how all of these concepts work together in a place in which we'll be by Monday, in which we try. Let's try government round 2. So talk to me about this John Dickinson quote. I saw a really good point from Arielle. Arielle, what did you have to say about this John Dickinson quote?
Omar said that he's trying to say that the states are independent, but only come together with the government to the sun when it's needed.
Good. So the states are independent. They're operating in their own orbit, doing their own thing, and they only come together when it's necessary. So the question that I pose to you, my friend, and to everybody, is who decides or who defines what's necessary, as you put it, for the national government? That's the question for today, which is why I picked your answer, because it's perfect. So like maybe Virginia thinks no national government is necessary, but Massachusetts thinks we should have more. So the question is like necessary is a subjective term. What I think is necessary, you might not think is necessary. I think your homework is necessary. Some of you obviously disagree. So today we'll talk about governing the new nation. Turn your ass around. You have a desk right here to work on. You have a desk right here to work on. If you showed me off with like a 37 or a 39 your last test, I'd have let you look backwards at Michael. I know Michael's beautiful. I agree. I especially appreciate his haircut. Because of that. We're going to govern the new nation. So we if you look at the way this unit is scaffolded, we start with like super happy to be British, French and Indian War, yay, we're proud of the British Empire. To like, whoa, what's happening? What are all these taxes? What are all this control? This is not good. The ideological foundations of the country, why we declare independence. We win independence, yay, that's great. And my question at the end of yesterday was, now what? Now what do we do? And today is part of the now what. So we have a brand new country. We got to figure out how to govern it. Your prompt is here. It's a good prompt. Kevin Scott, nice and loud for us, buddy. Highlight of my day every day.
Evaluate the extent to which the Articles of Confederation
Louder, Kevin Scott.
Evaluate the extent to which the Articles of Confederation provided an effective system of government in the new United States during and after the Revolution War.
Good job, Kevin Scott. Everyone clap for Kevin Scott today. Yeah, good job. By the end of the year, he's going to be ready to go. Evaluate the extent. Yeah, there we go. I don't know. I'm not hopeful. I won't hold my breath. I won't hold my breath. Now, it's a very wordy, chunky prompt. But all it's asking you is how much were the Articles of Confederation effective? So from your reading, would you just say large, moderate, small extent? What do you guys think? Large, was it very effective as a system of governance? Was it a little bit effective, but a little not effective, or was it not effective at all? Take a minute, talk to your partner, because I want you guys to at least wake your brains up and like think about what you read last night. How much was it effective? 1 minute, go. It won the war. The system of governance. I mean, that's kind of cool. Or did they win the war? Or did they just not win the war? That's good question. All right. that is your time. Yes, go ahead. Sure, say whatever you want. This is your world, I'm just living in it.
I was telling before that I think that it was kind of to a moderate extent just because we saw that before the war they came together through like their system of government and how it kind of served as a connection between all of them. But after the war, the colonies are just like, now what? Like we don't need to be together. We don't have a common cause to fight, and they're kind of just like they have it now after the war just to like keep the little strings, the tiny strings that like keep the tide like the United States.
Okay, that's back to Ariel's point, right? They're like, once the war's over, they're like, we don't need to be united so much anymore. Back to that question about what's necessary. I have a little chart here, a little cheat chart. The things that are effective about the articles, the things that are then terrible about the articles. We'll compile the cheat chart as we go. And in theory, that will provide you with your thesis statement. Because you can say they were effective because blank and blank. However, they were ineffective because X, Y, and Z. T-charts are awesome. Always use T-charts. Every time you thesis statement, it's always helpful. How many continuities? How many changes? Comparison, contrast. Effective, not effective. T-charts are the answer to all problems in life. Should I stay with you or should I not stay with you? All right, there we go. It's important. T-charts. Your outlines here. We'll talk first about state government. I talked a lot about yesterday as an introductory piece. The structure of the articles. There'll be more of a technical piece about how they're set up as a government and why. We'll talk about some successes. There's two very important successes that I'd like to highlight. The College Board is big fans of. We'll talk about shortcomings, which is a nice way of saying failures. I don't like to call you a failure, but I will call you a shortcoming. And then we'll end today with Shays' rebellion and the consequences, which is really the thing that undermines or topples or collapses the entire system of government, leading us to our new government, the Constitution, for Monday, which will carry us through to 2019. The fundamental question of today, the fundamental question of Monday, the fundamental question really of the rest of the school year. Liberty, what's another word for liberty? Freedom versus order versus stability. Talk to your partner. It's a thought question. You're not writing it down. This is a good brainstorm, like activate your minds on today's conversation. If you have too much liberty, what do you have? Or if you have too much order, what do you have? Take 2 minutes and talk about it. Dive in. Dive in. Glad you're here today. You okay? You broke your knee or something? Upstairs? So too much liberty, what do you have? There's too much freedom. Is there such thing as too much freedom? No? You don't think so? There should be no laws or anything? You should be able to do what the hell you want? Push back. Tell her she's wrong. Why? What do you think? If there's too much freedom, what do we have? It's okay. You disagree. Have a good, enriching conversation.
It was actually
Alright, sounds like you're done. Right on time. And this is our fundamental question of the day. Question: how do the colonists feel under parliamentary sovereignty? As if they had too much liberty or too much order? Too much order. Good. Good. But you can make an argument then that the British felt under salutary neglect, that the colonists had too much liberty. So what's my answer? If you have too much liberty, what do you have? Chaos. Chaos. What else? Use like a political term for me. You have too much liberty. What do you have? Anarchy. Right? The absence of authority. The absence of a body to tell you what to do. Interesting. Almost like you're living in a natural state. Or primitive state. A natural state in which no government, it's a man eat man world, or woman eat woman world, that's fine too.
I was about to say.
No, it's not. So then, what is the alternative here? If you have too much order, what do you have? Talk to me. Would you still have chaos? I don't know. It depends on how you define chaos. Good question. Good question, though.
I think that you would have too much oppression against your people.
Oppression.
To make things like, a good example is like when the colonists felt oppressed because they had too much, like the British troops.
Yeah. Too much order. So I'm thinking about like when the British troops, to your point, are present in Boston, they're there to maintain order. They're there to make sure everybody's following the rules. And how do the colonists feel? They feel oppressed. So if anything, if there's too much order, too many rules, too many restrictions, that means the government has too much power, then you live in a system of tyranny. So what do you guys think? What do you prefer? Which one? What do you prefer? Too much liberty, and then literally everybody's living in chaos, and everyone's fending for themselves and doing their own thing. You think you want that? I promise you, you don't want that. But you don't want this either. But at least there's rules. I know you guys don't like rules because you guys are teenagers. But in a society as a whole, rules are important. Why do I ask you this question? Why do I ask you this question? Because your goal in creating any system of government, your goal is to find this point. Your goal is to find the balance between enough liberty that people are free, but enough order that everything is organized and people can be protected. Good question. A Philadelphia newspaper during the Revolutionary War asks this question: which one of us should be the rulers? Which one of us should be there? It's a good ass line. Right, Philadelphia newspaper. Take a minute with your partner and talk about what does this quote demonstrate about colonial society, about colonial politics? What does this quote tell us about the problems that face a new nation after winning its independence? 1 minute. Go for it. Dive in. Goodbye. Randy.
Mother can be like who and what, and how like the new, how like this new like country, feel like kind of like ruling. It's kind of like those like too much liberty.
Stretching it out back there? I support that. All right, let me stop you. So, talk to me. I want somebody who's wise, who has some insight into this quote. So, Kevin Scott, prove these people wrong. What does this quote demonstrate about the struggles of the new nation?
That they're having like trouble electing a ruler.
Okay, sure. That they're having trouble figuring out a ruler. That's reasonable. Good. What else? And then what else? And then what else? Go.
Oh, they're struggling with who should be heads of power because they've never been completely alone or completely have control of their own government?
Now they have the freedom to make all their own choices, and it's like, oh no! Oh my God! We're on our own! Ariella, what's your hand do? No? We'll call it. Talk to me.
Well, what we talked about was that, like, it kind of showed that they just wanted independence, but they had no actual plan as to what to do after.
Absolutely. It's like teenagers. They want independence, but they have no actual plan about what to do once they become independent. Facts. I'm going to grow, I'm going to turn 18, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to get rich. That's a hell of a plan. How? Okay, good. There's two key words in here, though, that I find very eye-opening. Sometimes the shortest quotes can give you the best insight. Word one, us. We. Together. All right, this idea that for the first time, to your point, like, we get to do it ourselves. But the second line is also important. Second word is also important. Rulers. Because to me, that dictates that despite the fact that they're founding their ideas on all these natural rights and power to the people, etc., they're still looking at this as if somebody has to be in charge. And that's eye-opening. Because what are they used to? They're used to a constitutional monarchy. So, like, despite the fact that they have all these beautiful new ideas and ideals and these Enlightenment principles and their recipe list from yesterday, despite all of that, they're still operating from this mindset of somebody has to be in charge. So it's Philadelphia newspaper towards the end of the war asking this, I think, very fundamental question: which one of us should be the rulers? I like this. This makes me happy. I know, it's super corny and cheesy, but it makes me smile, so now you're going to smile at it. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. It was better 5 years ago when everyone still knew that Jay-Z song. I would say the lyrics, but it's very inappropriate for class, and I'm on camera, so I don't need to do that. It's a good song. Ask me about it after class. It's very offensive. So, diving into the actual instruction for today, what are the most important words in the Declaration of Independence? No, that's Free People's, definitely not the Declaration. That's the Constitution. All men are created equal and endowed, given by their Creator, certain inalienable rights, rights that can't be taken away. Among them, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Good. But guess what? When you found a nation on those words, that leads to some unintended consequences. Among them, people saying, hey, wait a second, I'm a man. Am I not equal? So the revolution leads to some unintended social changes. Because we fight a whole ass war on this idea that all men are created equal. So when we do that, the consequences of that are people in America, Americans, are questioning the meaning of the word equality. If we've all agreed that the country is built on equality, then why is everybody not equal? So this manifests itself three ways: economically, politically, and socially. Economically, Americans are going to question the idea of an American aristocracy, an American rich, ruling, elite upper class. People are like, well, if all men are created equal, we fought this war about tyranny, then we should be more equal economically. Further, fighting British tyranny makes slavery seem incredibly hypocritical. It does. All right, we're going to fight a war with this hand for equality, but on this hand hold slaves? That seems very hypocritical. Agree, disagree? Yeah, because you guys are using your 2019 logic on me. So this is going to create a growing abolitionist sentiment, this growing belief that maybe we should be doing something about slavery. And I showed you the map of this in class on Monday that showed you the northern states abolishing slavery. Like Massachusetts and New Hampshire around during the war, New York and Pennsylvania gradually after the war. So this abolitionist sentiment is actually going somewhere. And women, like Abigail Adams, are going to question the idea of we're going to have this whole new equality-based society, and you're going to neglect to include women in any of it? So politically speaking, many states are going to lower the property qualification to vote. Meaning many states are going to make it easier for people to vote. However, no states, not one, is going to offer universal male suffrage. Our colonies that had that are going to gradually shift away from that, but we are going to lower the bar to clear for voting rights. Does that make sense? So like if before the bar was here, you had to own X amount of property, now we're going to drop the bar to like here. So we're still trying to have some sort of an entrance ticket to vote and having some sort of property or a job or the like, so they don't want like the crazy common people voting. But we do lower the requirement to vote in most states. So that shows an expansion of what kinds of rights? Political, economic, or social? Political. Come on, guys. I need you with me. States like Vermont, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts are going to abolish slavery, which is going to show some social progress. 3 really important founding fathers. Very important. Ben Franklin, we talked about at great length. Albany Plan, French Alliance, Declaration of Independence Committee. He's been around for a hot minute. He's the oldest of these dudes. Ben Franklin, John Jay, and Alexander Hamilton, who we'll talk a lot about next week. Together, and then separately, are going to start to create abolition-based societies. So like groups that are pushing for abolition, which is cool. Right? So often we've gone the whole other way on the pendulum, and then all founding fathers are terrible slave owners, and there's 3 awesome examples of 3 of these early dudes who are actually fighting for the abolition of slavery. Washington himself is going to manumit his slaves. It's a good word, manumitted, which means he's going to free his slaves upon his death. It's a coward's way out, but at least it's something. So he's like, I'm going to keep y'all, but when I die, you'll be free. If I was a slave, I'll be like, cool, we're going to throw hands right now, and I'm going to kill you. Let's go. Yeah, so Washington's going to manumit his slaves. But we see black people, specifically in northern states, using the court system, demanding the right to freedom in lawsuits, demanding the right to freedom in petitions, asking the government, and saying, like, you founded this government on the idea of all men are created equal, therefore I should be equal, therefore I shouldn't be a slave anymore. So we see African Americans embracing this idea of using political means to pursue their own equality. Socially speaking as well, most states are going to very clearly separate church and state, which is one of the things that Roger Williams said in the first place. His critique of Massachusetts was we shouldn't have our church body be our political body. It doesn't work that way. So most states are going to say very clearly that the state government can't interfere with religion and vice versa. That's progress. And women are going to embrace, or society is going to embrace for them. Let me say that smarter. Society is going to embrace this idea of Republican motherhood. I'm going to say this now. It's going to play a role a lot in the next couple weeks. Republican motherhood. That a woman's job is not to work or be political, but it's also not to not be political. Women are going to play this neat middle road where their job is to instill or to raise their children with virtue, political awareness, and morals. So that when their kids become involved in politics, they are prepared to engage virtuously and morally in the political system. So women have this, what this is doing is it's raising the game for what women are being asked to do domestically. So everybody in this room thinks this is still a terrible goal for women. I don't disagree. But it's important that in 1787, this is a slight exaltation of the role because now women are being given some responsibility in terms of how they raise their kids to participate in this republic. Republican. What's up? Alright, cool. Cortez's main office is back. Cool. So all of this, though, if you think about it, everything here on this list, every piece of these consequences is an outcome of the idea of equality at the Revolutionary War. Like women's increased role, separating church and state, abolishing slavery. I'll go back to here, lowering the property requirements to vote. Every single one of these is an outcome or a consequence of the justification of the Revolutionary War. Now, when independence was declared in 1776, the states themselves and the country is going to consider themselves independent, despite the fact that the war is not over yet. Well, what's going to happen is these colonies are going to, instead of forming a huge national government, the colonies themselves are going to become individually sovereign states. So that Virginia runs Virginia, Massachusetts runs Massachusetts, New York runs New York. And the most of the power, most of the power is going to stay at the state level. Now, a national government that connects all of it is going to be needed. A national government is needed, but only for very basic things that are, to your point, necessary for the national government to do, such as develop a military, sign treaties with other countries, sign agreements, those types of things. So I ask you, what does the creation of state governments with individual sovereignty reveal about the political characteristics of the United States? What does it say about their politics that this is the route that they go with individually sovereign states? I want you to take a minute with your partner and discuss this question, and we're going to respond to this question, and then we'll share as a class. 1 minute. Go. Power. Sovereign means that's where the power resides. We've already talked about this. What does it say about the state of politics? How we doing? Yeah, why are you sleeping? You don't know? Why don't you run and grab some water real quick? Come back here. It's helpful to stretch your legs sometimes. Go fill it up, and that way you can come back and be nice and hydrated. Cool? There you go, buddy. I need a response. What does it say? What does it reveal? So let's talk about it then, since y'all all answer. Stansbury, what does it reveal? What does it tell us about the political system that this is the route they took politically?
They chose to have most of the power within their own state.
Yes.
They're afraid of giving too much power to the national government.
Snaps for Stansbury. I love Stansbury the most because he always looks confused, but he always has the right answer. That's why I appreciate that. So yeah, it demonstrates that they are afraid of centralized power. They're afraid of giving too much power to a national government because they've just experienced that with Great Britain. How many of you guys have an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend? It's okay. It happens. Nobody? None of y'all? Yeah. Michael's the only person that... Good for him. He dates. Lovely. But think about it. Say you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever you prefer, and imagine like the worst boyfriend or girlfriend you could ever imagine. Right? You like to have your own time, and they're like super demanding. They're always checking in on you. Like, I know. Tell me about it. Super high attentive, texting you all day. Right? You like to go work out, and they're like, nah, man, I don't do that. I'm gonna sit here on the couch and eat Fritos. You know. So think about that. And you break up with the world's worst boyfriend or girlfriend. You with me? What kind of person do you date next? The same? Because y'all stupid as hell?
Just stop for like 10 years.
Stop for 10 years. That's a good idea. What type of person would you pick in your next boyfriend or girlfriend? The opposite. You just had a terrible experience with somebody who's like this. So why would you pick a similar person? Now, most of you guys have types, and girls that like boyfriends that treat them terribly, they date the same type of person 15 times and like, well, I don't know why they're always so mean to me. Stop picking terrible humans. But that's beside my point. What happens when you have a bad experience with this is you choose the opposite for your next experience. And then you find out maybe the happy place is somewhere in the middle. So what we're doing, to Stansbury's point, is we're so worried about national authority being too strong that you're shifting to a world in which all power is going to reside at the state level. state constitutions, they're going to outline some pretty important things, though. These state constitutions that each state's going to make are going to very clearly define the rights of citizens. It's in these state constitutions where we see for the first time the right to free speech, the right to petition, the right to assemble, the right of the freedom of the press. It's at this state level where all the rights that we now think of as American rights start to be integrated at the state level. It's at the state level as well, though, where we're going to start seeing limits, like actual constitutional legal limits on what the government can and can't do. It's important. It's at the state constitutional level that you start seeing a constitutional guarantee of natural rights, the rights that all people have regardless of who you are. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that, but it says so on paper. 8 of the 13 states have bills of rights, which are basically an outlined list of like all the things that people can do and the government can't touch those rights. We have a Bill of Rights today in America. We'll talk about that on Monday. This is important. This is the last important piece before I let you guys read for a hot second. Almost all the states, almost all of them, make the governor, the person, like the one person, the king, the executive, if you will, of each state, make the governor very limited in their powers and give their state legislature, their state assembly, almost all the powers. That's key. Almost all the states make the governor very minimally powerful, and they keep almost all the power in the hands of the people via state legislatures, state assemblies. That's republicanism. The power is in who the people pick to make their decisions. So it's important that we see that like a lot of those values that were very important to the colonies are now very important to the United States. So a lot of these things that have been developed because of salutary neglect carry over and carry through into our new United States governing system. It's intentional. I'll use Pennsylvania for an example. Pennsylvania is kind of crazy. Let me give you Pennsylvania as one because Pennsylvania is crazy. Pennsylvania has a unicameral legislature. Quick check on your language skills. What does unicameral mean? I know, it's a tough one, but it's an important term for it. What does uni mean? Single. Cool. So they have one legislative body. One legislative body. Just one. Just one. And they have total power. Total power. There should be a governor or an executive, a executive to balance the legislative branch. They don't have a governor. The state itself is going to provide elementary education to everybody in the state so that everybody that's engaged in this process can be a little bit educated, which is kind of cool. And there is zero property requirement to serve on this legislative body. You don't even need to own property to be in a legislative body in an assembly in Pennsylvania. Who thinks this is a good idea? This is you guys like democracy, you said so. This is a very democratic look at things. Who thinks this is a good idea? Anybody? Nobody? Who thinks this is a bad idea? Who's awake today? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Lovely. I'm doing my job, guys. Where you at? I know Antonio's awake now. This is good. Nieto, what's a potential problem with this situation? You're going to sit and just whisper to Lopez all day, and I'll give you some answers. Nieto, talk to me. What are the potential problems in this Pennsylvania situation? Question for you guys. As a class, I asked these two the same thing earlier. If you go to the gym with me and you watch me work out, do you get any stronger? No, you guys are just creepers at the gym that are just watching me work out. If we go to the gym and work out together, do you get any stronger? Yes. My question to you is like, if you're just sitting here looking at me like this, you're not getting any stronger. I'm asking you to think while we're thinking together, but if you're not willing to do that, then I'll just make you read all day and that's fine. Who prefers to have you guys just sit and read text all day, and then take naps like Mocha's class? Nobody wants that? Okay, cool. But then I ask questions. I'm going to expect that you have something to say to me. Otherwise, you're just staring at me. I don't like to be stared at. Makes me feel weird and objectified. So Nieto, Tell me, what might be a potential problem with the way Pennsylvania set their government up? Too many people. It means he literally said nothing. Michael, what might be a problem? Get your head on straight. I asked you when you came into class to do a little bit of thinking today. Michael, talk to me.
Like, this could, so like anyone could be there, like.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be like. There's like no government either.
There's a government, there's no governor.
Government.
Okay? So there's no executive, just one body. Cool. Kava, thank you for raising your hand.
Would it be that like too many individuals being thrown in from like different like social like
That's a part of it. Keep going.
that it will create like conflict between them and it won't actually pass any laws that are effective.
Cool. It won't pass any effective laws because there's too many ideas because everything's happening in one place. That's reasonable. That's reasonable. What else? Talk to me.
Kind of to like add on to the point, I think like it creates more disparities like in between the kind of decisions that they're making, because if you have, if there's some property requirement and the majority of the people do own property or they don't own property, it creates kind of like unequal like decision making, and it kind of leads to like conflict in between the decision making, and people are just going to be against it and they're not necessarily going to be.
I think you guys are focusing too much on this as the problem, when in my opinion, this is the problem. Take a minute, talk to the person next to you. Actually, for this time, try to actually speak to the person next to you to try to answer my question. What is the problem with having one legislative assembly that has complete power and no governor? 1 minute, go.
Trying to get like the ideas to go and
Do you think that like it also creates
and not just like someone actually like
I didn't know
All right. So let me hear from Dahlia. What is the problem with this, the setup of this government?
So for the first bullet point, it says that there's only one house with complete power. And I feel like that's a problem because like if there's only like a certain amount of people with complete power over like everything, the whole state, then that could be kind of like bad because like there's no one that's like saying like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do this because like that's not a good law or something like that.
There we go. There's no what on the power. Check. Right, we talked, one of the Enlightenment ideas that's important is separation of powers. The other one is republicanism. So which one does Pennsylvania embrace, republicanism or separation of powers? Yeah, right, they're fully in on having all the power in the legislative assembly. However, there's no separation of powers. This is my point about having the right ingredients, but the wrong mix of them. So the argument here is that like, yeah, we put all the power in the hands of the people, but you didn't check that power. And we'll read about why that's a problem in a little bit. John Adams looks at this and says, this is too much democracy. This is too much power in the hands of the people. There was no check. There's no balance on one group of people making all the decisions. I know, it's a good chart. But this shows you that these colonial, these Virginia, Pennsylvania, these assemblies, who makes them up? It's a good map. It's a good chart, excuse me. We see that based on where you are, it determines like who is making the decisions for your state. I'll just use the two crazy examples for you. In Massachusetts, it's mostly farmers, just everyday farmers that are on the assembly, that are on their legislative assembly. And then you have some doctors and lawyers and other rich people, a small percentage. 20% you have the merchants or the traders, business people. And then 12% are artists or manufacturers or other people. And only 7% of Massachusetts are the large landowners on their assembly. Pretty fair. Do you guys agree? Is it the super rich that have all the power? What group is most represented? Everyday farmers. That's a big deal. Let's go to South Carolina, your favorite state. 32% of their assembly are planters or large slave landowners. Big chunk. The next biggest chunk is 22% unknown. Which means they're probably just born with money and they're engaging in politics without really doing any work. The next biggest chunk is doctors, lawyers, or other professionals. So in South Carolina, what do you need to be basically in order to be in their assembly? You need to be rich, yeah. So even within the states, we see a disparity in who is serving on these assemblies. So I have a text for you. It's John Adams' thoughts on government that he publishes while we're trying to figure out what the hell to do about the government. It's a great text. It's very monumental and groundbreaking and important. Yeah, it's long, but I have a couple stop checkpoints. So if you turn the page, there's a big black capital letters that says stop. And exclamation point, you're going to stop there. So I'm going to give you 4 minutes to read this first chunk. And there's 2 questions. What is the purpose of government according to Adams? And what ideal or ideals does Adams want the new form of government founded upon? 4 minutes to read. I'll let you talk about it, then we'll break down the class. Go. 30 or so seconds left for those first two questions. What is the purpose of government, and what does he want the government founded on? The answers from everybody in the room. Pen to paper. Otherwise, you're just watching the people work out, and that's creepy. All right. Take a minute with the person next to you and dive in on both questions. What is the goal? What's the purpose of the government, and what ideas or ideals should be founded on? 1 minute. Go. Go. I need answers from everybody. All right. So let's talk about it. First, I'm going to pick on Montan. Thanks for volunteering. What's the purpose of government, according to Adams? What's the government there to do? Sure, to benefit everyone. Good. What other words could we use, Brenda? What is the purpose of government? Good job. Well done.
To have like a society that they're happy.
Yeah, the happiness of society. It says, upon this point, all politicians will agree the happiness of society is the end of government, the goal of government. Good. To make the people in society happy. Turn your page. Now, what idea or ideals does he think our society or government should be founded on? Brian, talk to me.
He thinks that the government should be based on what the people want.
Sure, that's part of it. What shouldn't the government be based on? Fear, right? That we're not going to have a government that we're just scared of. But he identifies two things that are important to creating good government. But you're right, what the people want. But what two specific ideas or characteristics? Go for it. Noble principles or virtue. Doing the right thing. And the other one is? What's that? Yeah, morals. Moral excellence. Right? Having a moral compass. Taking care of people. Not getting into government to take care of yourself. Reasonable. So morals, virtues. Good job, guys. Good job. Good job. I like it. Well done. Jump to the part below. He's going to talk about what he thinks is important in a legislative assembly. How to make it up, who to put on it, etc. So you're going to read from where it says stop all the way to the next stop, which is almost at the end. And it gets a little wordy, but don't get caught up so much in the minutia. Focus more on what he's pushing about, what he sees in a good legislative assembly. So you have those four questions. Why does he give such thought to the makeup of the assembly? How should the assembly be made demographically? In his opinion, what's the problem with a single assembly that we talked about over here? Jolly has a good point. What's the problem with only having one assembly? And why are the other branches still necessary if the assembly is so qualified and carefully assembled? I'll give you 6 on this. And then I can extend it to 7 if we need it, but read aggressively for 6, and I want to see good annotation and good response to those questions if you need it to respond. If you don't need it, get the right answer, good for you. 6 minutes, go. give a lot of attention to this legislative assembly. Why? What does it say about it? Oregon? It's pretty small school. What's up?
We need to take like the best parts of our society, of our nature as people, and put that in the government. Not necessarily just like like people that have virtues and morals, people that make good decisions or make good decisions, like that's the type of people we want to have in government. If our government acts on the best natures of men, then we have a good government. I know that how you you're out there last time. Chief. So in my room, grab it. Middle cabinet, left hand side. That's where all the paper is.
Take as much as you need.
Yeah.
And good quality responses. Show me you understand. Show me you're reading. They're good questions.
Society, we can't offer them better. Good.
Call my shot right now.
I think both of them combined will get a 9. We'll see if it's 5 or 4. That's where it's like. Yeah, sure. But also, like, it's the most important piece to the whole government. So we should be really careful about how to create it because go ahead, try it.
Live in that text, guys. Get the answers from the text. Show me some heavy lift. If you want to watch me work out for yourself. Show figures how much more time do we need to finish that chunk? 2, okay? I think 2 is fair. 2 minutes. Read actively. Get after it. Of course. So I want you to then take the next two and talk to your people, focusing on question 2 on that front page. How should the assembly be made demographically? Meaning, like, how should we decide who's on this assembly? And the question below it, what are the problems, to Dahlia's earlier phenomenal point, what are the problems with having only one assembly making all the decisions? Take 2 time on those 2 questions, dive in. Go for it. Go for it. Those questions should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I need good answers for both these questions. The text is there to teach you. Let the text teach you. A lot of you guys are on the right track, but I need you to get more comfortable getting knowledge from text. It's your best friend.
It's true. Good. Equal, and whoever's in the society, they should all be equally represented, right? So if our society is like 20% rich, what percentage of rich people should be on the assembly? 20%. Equal representation, right? Then if our society is like 50% farmers, then our assembly should be 50% farmers, right? Equal representation.
Well, what's up, you guys there? How should it be made up? What should be the demographic makeup of the assembly? Michael?
People with equal interest in government.
Sure, people that have interest in government, that makes sense, but how should we make up the entire body? The entire body. Antonio, how should we create representation on this legislative assembly?
I guess I get like one point though. And like and let's try to get like I'm trying to think of this stuff.
Marcelo.
Well, like the second sentence says, in like this paragraph, it says that it should be a miniature and exact portrait of the people.
It should be an exact portrait of the people. You pull out the perfect sentence. That whatever our society looks like, a little bit of rich, a good chunk of middle class, a little bit of poor, our legislative assembly should look the same way. Equal representation for all parts of society. Yes, Daniel. I took your words.
That was gonna add on the bring up
So the point is, like, if our society looks like this in a pie chart, right? And we got farmers, you got business people, you got laborers. I'm just making this up for whats and giggles. Then how should our assembly look? The same way. That to your point, it should be a mirrored portrait of society. That then this same chunk of farmers should be serving on the assembly. This same chunk of business should be serving on the assembly. That our assembly, because it's the will of the people, should mirror the people. I think it's pretty straightforward. Now he gives you some problems though. What are some problems only having, like Pennsylvania did, one legislative body? What are some of the problems? Give me one, please, Daniel, and then I'm going to ask for one from Arieli, and then I'm going to ask for one from Garcia. Go.
The problem is that like there's no one to really call out the kind of problems within the assemblies themselves. So it kind of pulls to the idea that there needs to be someone in place, a certain power in place to keep check and like bring this assembly to a near perfection.
Good. There's nobody to check the assembly if it's just one assembly. That first line under number 1 is great. A single assembly. I'm going to use this line a lot of times this year. A single assembly, one group of people, is just as bad as one person. then like having one legislative group is just as bad as having one king. Because one group is liable to all the vices, all the follies, all the frailties of an individual. If it's just one group, they might be corrupted as one group. They might be passionate about one subject that the rest of the people in the society don't appreciate. Because it's just one, bias, it's just one group. And sure, it's harder to corrupt than one individual, but it's still just one group. There's still no check on it. All right, Ellie, what else? What other problems are there with having one single assembly?
But it wouldn't benefit anyone else other than those that like the good and the wise.
Yeah. Then eventually they're going to start passing laws that's going to benefit who? Themselves. Yeah. Then eventually, like, if nobody's there to check them, they'll start passing laws that are beneficial just to their own group or their own people. Good. Adding number 3 is very important. You got what it is? Talk to me. This is a good one.
They hesitate to vote for themselves.
Okay.
And they grow ambitious.
Okay. They're going to grow ambitious, right? They want to get their own power. What does the word perpetual mean? It keeps going. It's forever. Number 3 says a single assembly might grow ambitious or like pursuing their own benefit, and after a time will not hesitate to vote itself perpetually. Eventually, they might get ambitious and vote, make a new law that they are now the legislative body forever. And guess what? Now you have a legislative body that's acting as a king. That's just there forever. Because there's no, back to Dahlia's point at the beginning, there's no check, no way to balance that power. Good job. John Adams is a smart man. He's a terrible president, don't worry. But he's a very, very smart man. Good. Now, does he think that he gives all this effort to just the legislative body? Does he think that that should be the only power in government? No. What other 2 powers should exist? Talk to me loud. Loud. An executive and a judicial, right? An executive to enforce the laws and a judicial branch to interpret the laws. And he says, there's a legislative body, let them just make laws. That's their job. But don't ask them to do then everything else. Good. I'm going to move forward to make sure that we can finish on time. But good job on that text. It's important. John Adams' proposal. So get your eyes back up on the front of the room. John Adams' proposal out of this Thoughts on Governments gives us this idea that, hey, how about instead of like all these different things, we should have a 3-branch government. As you just read about. Legislative, having most of the power, but then also an executive and a judicial branch that exists as well. And he says, how about in our legislative branch, you don't just have one body, but you have 2. So that even in the legislation, even in passing laws, you still have checks on what's happening law-wise. So that one group still doesn't control the entire lawmaking process. And he says, very importantly, that our judiciary, our judges, our court system, they shouldn't be voted on. They should be appointed. They should be picked. Because if you were elected, who do you answer to? The people that picked you. If you were a judge that's not elected but appointed, then you answer to the law, not to the people. So that's Adam's thoughts. It's a good thought, good series of thoughts. That'll all end up coming true come Monday. However, nobody listens to John Adams, and we create a government that doesn't look anything like this instead. Creating a national government that meets everybody's desires is quite difficult because of our question about liberty versus order. The questions become, how do you maintain, how do you balance individual freedoms with order or stability in society as a whole? How do you balance the desire for property rights or people owning private property with the idea that everybody should be equal? In a society in which property is everything, if you don't own property, you're not special, but then how do we balance the idea of equality in there? And then the most important question, how do you create a centralized government that is not tyrannical, that is not too much power in the hands of the centralized government? So all these questions, what ends up happening is we err on the side of caution for each one. Too little power, too little stability, too much freedom, because we're so worried about replicating what happened with Great Britain. The argument at the beginning is, it's a good line, oppose everything that leans to aristocracy or power in the hands of the rich. America is so fearful or hesitant of a society that is run by rich elite people then they're going to go the entirely opposite direction. Oppose everything that leads to aristocracy or power in the hands of the rich. So that's going to give us what's called the Articles of Confederation, America's first system of government. Starting in 1781, so during the actual Revolutionary War, this is the new body of government that's going to run the country. What is the Articles replacing? What was the original body governing the country during the war? This is all the way back to Monday, guys. What's the original group running the country during the Revolutionary War? The Second Continental Congress. Good. The Articles is going to have a very weak central government, but my point is that it's intentional. It's supposed to be weak. Because their priority is to protect states' powers of the states to do their own thing. Structurally speaking, the Confederation-style government gives all 13 states one vote. Every state has one vote in this process, one vote only. Who does that hurt, the big states or the small states? Think about it. Who does it hurt, the big states or the small states? You say big states? I agree. Why? Louder.
I think it hurts the big states more because the big states have more people and
So therefore they should have more.
representation.
Yeah. So the big states like Virginia or New York has the exact same vote as like South Carolina or Rhode Island, even though they have way more people. Right? Because they're so focused on all the states being equal, doing their own thing, that every state gets one vote. And it is a unicameral Congress. So how many houses do they have in the legislative body? One. It's in the word. Also, there's no national president. So there's no real executive to enforce the law. So if anything, they look kind of like Pennsylvania. Each state is treated as a pseudo or like a pretend or a semi-nation of their own. And they're worried having any president or any executive or even a governor for the country, they're worried that's too similar to a monarch. So they avoid that at all costs. Avoid that at all costs. I'll go back since you guys are still writing seriously. What's what you guys saying? Now, for a variety of reasons, though, Americans still aren't concerned about like engaging in a national government because, for the most part, peoples are still worried about local ties, state ties. Most Americans at this point still consider themselves as citizens of their states, not as people in the United States of America. It's brand new. Yes. Louder. You're gonna ask a question, make sure everybody can hear him.
No, that's kind of what I told you earlier. That like with them kind of building like a new government, it's kind of them dealing with their identity crisis, because they each have their own identity as a state, but they kind of have a hard time identifying together. And it leads to a lot of conflict.
They're going to prefer to identify themselves, like I said, when they were colonists, as Virginians, as New Englanders, as New Yorkers, as South Carolinians. Right? That their main identity is still local. And that's for a couple reasons. Because I asked you this question before. One, they're worried about national power, so they don't want to identify themselves as part of a national system because they like local power. They like their state assemblies. They like their local assemblies. Their belief that sovereignty or power of the state is way more important than the power of the central government. Two, infrastructure-wise, the states still aren't really connected. We don't see a lot of roads. We don't see a lot of interconnectivity. Up to this point, we haven't seen a lot of trade in the states. Why not? Mercantilism. Right? Because up to this point, now that we're finally independent, we can finally start like making an interconnected economy. But up to this point, our economy's all been tied state to colony to England, colony to England, colony to England. Now this problem is going to prove to be worrisome later as we ask people to start, or Americans to start identifying themselves as members of the whole country. People are going to be very fond of this idea of states' rights. Keep this idea in mind, because it's going to cause us all kinds of problems for the rest, the entire rest of the school year. States' rights, states' rights, states' rights. So let's talk about what powers we actually give the national government. That is there at the very bottom. The only powers given to the national government. So the national government has no powers except settling disputes between states. So if Massachusetts and New York are beefing, the national government or the Articles of Confederation can help solve that. Only thing they can do. negotiate treaties. What's the one treaty this government negotiates? The Treaty of Paris, 1783. So kind of a big one. We can put that as a positive. Treaty of Paris. So they get us our independence. That's kind of a big deal. Kind of a big treaty. They can handle Indian affairs, and they can oversee a national military. But it's more important the list of things the government can't do. The government cannot tax citizens. Why not? Why can't this government tax citizens? Why would they create a system like that? Because they're scared of taxes because of Britain. They're scared of national government taxes. Do they have any problem paying their state taxes? No. But it also can't tax the states. Which is so like this national government can't even say, South Carolina, you owe the government this tax much for being part of this country. So they can't tax anybody. How are they going to raise money? They can instead request contributions from the states. Let me see how this works. Josue, give me $10 now. Josue, can you please give me $10? I'd really appreciate it. Which one are you more likely to answer to? Which one are you more likely to answer to? What?
$2.
I didn't ask for you. Yeah, exactly. If I say, I really would appreciate if you gave me, who's seen somebody on the side of the freeway like asking for money? Yes. Sometimes I give them money, right? If I have $1 in my center console, I'll give them $1. Reasonable?
Yeah.
But what if I pulled up to the side of the road right there, and then I roll my window down, and they pull out a knife and say, give me all your money? Am I going to give them $1 or more? Probably more. So the point is, like, when they request money, the national government can request money, but it doesn't mean they can actually tax or collect money. That's problem one. Problem two, any law requires 9 of the 13 states to approve. What would you need for a majority out of 13? 7, because 6 is not quite half of 13. You need 7. You guys understand how majorities work?
Yes.
By asking for 9, you're asking for what's called a supermajority. You're making it even harder to pass new laws, which means nothing will get done. Last, changing the articles required unanimous consent. All 13 states have to agree. Now, do you think you can get all 13 states to agree on anything? No. So it's very difficult to pass laws, and it's basically impossible to amend, but they set it up this way on purpose. The articles are created to very loosely tie the states together in what's called a firm league of friendship. Not a real union, a firm league of friendship. Now if you go to the table on the next page, most of you guys are already there. I put for you kind of the structure of the articles, and I'm going to give you just 3 minutes because we're a little behind on time because you guys are a little slower than normal on a Thursday today, which is okay, but we're a little behind on time. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to just focus on the first column, the why. Why would they create a government that has this, and this? So take 3 with your people as quickly as possible and identify the why on that. And then we'll try to finish on time. So 3 minutes. Yes, that's right. Of what? Fear of. Quickly!
Just like questions and targets.
Oh, about yeah, no. You're like, you're about paying you at all. Why? Why would they create a system that all those things in place? It's work. Think about it. Because they don't want laws to be changed quickly. They want things to be nice. They don't want policies to change.
Do we see the flares? That is kind of
I don't see that.
no guess.
Oh, yeah, that is okay.
Good. Focus on the why. Why? Why? What are they trying to avoid? What are they trying to not have happen? What are they trying to create a system where this doesn't happen? They don't want like policy change. Like laws to change slowly. Because most things should be 7. In fact, it's a 9, so it's a little bit a higher bar. So, cannot force 5. Oh, you show up late and then yawn and stretch like you own the joint? Or exactly. All right. So, I want to highlight a good thing that Angel said. He said, I know. He just said, can I put fear for all of them? And in a sense, yeah, right? Fear, they're worried about something. So, fear of tyranny. Fear of laws changing really quickly whenever the government feels like it. So they make it harder to pass laws so that things change slowly over time instead of whenever the government changes their opinion. Fear of federal government taxation. Fear of a standing army from the Quartering Act. Fear of the army like being present at all times. Fear of, remember I told you guys when they were being tried in courts back in England for violating the laws? Yeah, and they want to be only tried by their local courts where they think they can get a fairer trial. Fear of the government changing. Fear of the national government imposing too much money on people. Fear, you see my point? So it's fear of everything Great Britain did is why they create this system. But when you live your life entirely in fear of other things, you create a system that's going to fail yourself. I'll let you guys fill this part in, which is what John Adams said, yeah. I'll let you guys fill this part in on your own later. What potential problems exist from creating a government that can't do these things? I think it's pretty common sense, though. No Thomas Paine joking. Now, the articles are weak, but I told you the articles are weak on purpose. It's a weak national government with no power to tax. Ooh, also important, no power to regulate trade between the states. There's no common currency. This is hilarious to me. If you think about this, like there's no American dollars. There's like Virginia dollars, Connecticut dollars, Massachusetts dollars. You take your Virginia dollars to Massachusetts, you don't know what it's going to get. It is stupid, you're right, but they're so worried about nationalized economic systems that they don't do anything economically. Question for you guys, it's a question I'll ask you all year. What is a dollar worth? Lopez, what's a dollar worth? It's a piece of paper? Sure. Leslie, what's a dollar worth? Kenya, what's a dollar worth? It's not a hard question, guys. You guys have dollars in your pockets right now. What's it worth? 4 quarters. Yeah, you're right. Good. 100 cents. Good. What else is it worth? These are all wrong. A dollar is only worth what you can get for it. So it's worth a bag of chips, or it's worth this. You know, it's still worth. The only thing in life that hasn't changed since I was your age to now, only thing that hasn't changed in price, Arizona iced tea. Yeah, that's still 99 cents. So, but my point is that so these Virginia dollars and Massachusetts dollars and Connecticut dollars, they're not worth anything if you can't get anything for them. So there's no currency system. Each state gets 1 vote regardless of population. And there's no executive branch or governor or president. And there's no national court system because they were so worried about being tried in a court outside their state, far from home. Now there are 2 successes that I want to highlight. The first is the the only real success deals with the same issue, and it's land settlement. Remember I circled all that new land yesterday? And I said, look at the new problem. The only real success, the only success we can really give the articles is land settlement. I'll put it over here. Land settlement. So this is, isn't it funny that this is the Ohio River Valley that we were fighting the war about in the first place that caused all this trouble that gave us on and on and on and on. So the first success is the Land Ordinance of 1785. The Land Ordinance of 1785. Now, how is the government going to make money? Can they tax? No. So their source of money is going to be selling all the land they just acquired from Great Britain. I know, smart, huh? Smart. Since the government can't tax, it needed a source of income. So all of this land west of the Appalachian Mountains, where the proclamation line of 1763 was, that land will be sold to settlers at a very cheap price. The money the government will get from selling that land will run the government. Big deal. So the land ordinance is a success because it creates income for the government, but it also allows anybody to go out and buy land at a cheap price from the government. Who does this benefit? Rich people, poor people, everybody? Yeah, everybody, right? It's a reasonable price. You can go out there, you can buy land, and you can hang out in Ohio of all places, or freaking Indiana. Antonio, are you alive?
Yeah,
Go stand in the back. Now.
I know, it sucks.
Second success is the Northwest Ordinances, which is going to deal with the exact same land. So this is success, the land ordinance, because it lets people spread out. Second success is the Northwest Ordinance, because this is called now the Northwest Territory. The Northwest Territory. Why is it called that? Because it's in the northwest of America at the time. It's pretty straightforward. It's north and west. I know. English is crazy. English is so confusing. Well, because you don't know what the west is. Now, what the Northwest Ordinance is going to do is twofold. One, this is very important, but it sounds not important. It's going to create the process for all these territories to become states. If they weren't a state, what would they become? All this land is part of America, but it's not a state. What does it technically become? That's a good question. Think about it. If all these territories, people are going to move there, people are going to work there, but they're not an actual state, they're not part of the system, what do they become? Colonies. I know. It had it here, had it there, the back had it. So think about it. What we're going to do by allowing, we're going to have a whole process that once you become 5,000 people, you can have an assembly. Once you get to 60,000 people, you can apply and become an actual state. What that says is important, is that all of our new land will join the Union as equal states, not as colonies. So every time, it sets the precedent that every time we spread out, all the new land doesn't come in as like lesser or a colony or less important. We're not benefiting from them without any benefit to them. That we're not going to repeat the cycle of what happened with Great Britain, where we're just living as colonies. That all of our new land will be co-equal states, which is key. Which is quite key.
Can we see like the development of more identity?
Yes. Go ahead. What?
Can we see that development of more identity?
Yeah. Also, the second thing it does, which is the most important piece of this, other than the state piece, it bans slavery in these territories. So as we spread out to the Northwest Territory, everything north of the Ohio River is not allowed to have slavery. So we've banned slavery and made the Ohio River the dividing line between free and slave states. And now, even in 1787, we're seeing very strong sectional lines between where slavery exists and where slavery doesn't exist. And it's the Revolutionary War that causes those northern states to abolish slavery and the southern states to double down on slavery. So all of these Northwest Territory states, eventually they become Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and part of Minnesota, are not allowed to have slavery at any time, and they never do. What?
This is what you were telling us about how like when you went there.
Yep, there's the river. And it says that all this whole territory will be no less than 3, but no more than 5 new states. And sure enough, they get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of it. So we got 5, but you got to wait until you have 60,000 people in each territory to become a state. And it's important that each state that joins gets the exact same rights as Virginia, same rights as New York, same rights as Massachusetts. It doesn't matter if you're a new state or an old state. Once you are a state, you are put on equal footing as everybody else. But all of our new land won't be colonies. It's important. I know today's not an exciting day of content, but it's a very important foundational day of content. Cool. There's the map I'm talking about. Here's the Northwest Territory, and you can see when they become states. Ohio becomes a state in 1803, which means they have how many people? 60,000, good. Indiana's next in 1816, and then Illinois in 1818. They have a little lull, Michigan in 37, and Wisconsin in 1848. What this does, though, it doesn't allow Virginia to say, you know what, we're freaking Virginia, we do whatever we want. This is all now part of Virginia. Because Virginia tried that. They did. They're like, yeah, well, we're Virginia. We need more land for our slaves. We need more land for our planters. We need more land for tobacco. So what the Northwest Ordinance does is it keeps the states from competing with each other to get more land in the West. Big success. All right, and that's as well. I forgot all my cool visuals. I know. So that each territory will be divided into grids. All these grids will be divided into smaller grids, and each plot of land will be divided into a smaller town where every single person can buy a plot of land. Yeah, I know. So it's a grid, and then a grid, and then a grid. And then guaranteed in each of these 6x6 squares, one spot is saved for a school. Yeah, so as we spread out in the north, not in the south, as we're in the north, we're guaranteeing education in these states as we spread out. Foreshadowing. I know. Isn't this cool? I was pretty happy with this. So then, like, zoomed out, that's how it looks, right? That each little area is divided into, like, what becomes counties. These counties become towns, and these towns become grids, and these grids become people's property and schools. It's kind of cool. I enjoy it. That is the way it looks. So now we have all of this land, which is our 13 colonies, become our 13 states. Here's our Northwest Territory, which Virginia claimed. They give it back to the government. They give away their claim. Massachusetts said this was their land, even though Massachusetts is way the hell over here. So like these states that were trying to claim land in the West give away those claims. They give it to the national government to sell, make money, and settle more orderly Western. Yes?
So do we see Americans populating these lands, or do we see other people from other nations?
Both. We see immigrants populating this land, and then other poor Americans, because they get who migrate. Poor that are even in America are going to spread westward as well. So the significance of both these laws is you allow for orderly settlement of Western colonies, Western states, so they will not be colonies. Pros, good things. Outlaw slavery, that's a good thing. Allow for education, that's a good thing. And you created a system for democracy, that once you have X amount of people, your state gets a vote. So it's going to encourage people to move west, knowing that if they move west, they still would be part of the American system instead of just out in some colony on their own. The cons, the negatives, you create a very clear dividing line between slave and non-slave areas. You put a line in the actual country, the Ohio River, and says slavery's cool here, it's not cool here. And also, Native Americans have claims to this land via all kinds of treaties, and we're like, cool, it's ours now, thank you for playing. Have you tried some smallpox? It's delicious. Now, let's talk about, I don't even sit down that way. Let's talk about what the problems under the articles. Now we'll look at the negatives, the downsides, economically and foreign policy-wise. Economically, the colonists are so proud of themselves during the war because they're boycotting England. But after the war, guess what? Now we got to boycott England forever because we broke up with them. So all these boycotts have hurt trade, and everybody, Thomas Paine said in Common Sense, but once we get rid of England, we can trade with everybody, we're going to be rich. But after the war, the Confederation has a very difficult time getting our economy up and running. What have we operated in this entire time we've been colonies? What system? Mercantilism. Selling raw materials, buying back manufactured goods. The problem becomes, now we have to do that without England's support and without England's help.
Yeah, I think it's better.
Yeah, I agree. You're a smart man. So the Congress, the articles have a very difficult time paying off the debt the country has. Why does the country have debt? Because war is expensive. And collecting taxes. Why do they have a hard time paying off the debt? Because they can't tax the people. So since they have no way to make money to pay off this debt, the economy is going to suck. Second problem, inflation. During the war, they just kept printing paper money. But that is not a good idea because now the more money you print, does your money get more or less valuable?
Less
Yeah. So now like we have this huge inflationary problem. George Washington famously says, a cart full of paper money could not even buy one cart of groceries. So you can have like all this money and be like, here, I have my cash. I'm like, okay, here's 6 apples and a plum. And the problem is we don't have a very favorable balance of trade, which means we're having to buy more from other countries than we're selling to them. We're importing more than we're exporting, which is bad practice economically. Now, the U.S. has $40 million in debt at the end of the war. We borrowed money from France. We borrowed money from Great Britain before the war. We borrowed money from the Spanish during the war. So we owe a lot of money. And we can't pay it back because Congress can't tax. We're so worried about taxation that we set up a system in which we are then powerless. So Congress, in all of their glory, prints $200 million in new currency to pay off the debts. But now, genius, exactly. Brilliant. All right, that's always the answer. Why don't we just print more money? But the problem then is like you have huge inflation. Everything costs way more because dollars are then worth way less. What's a dollar worth? What you can get for it. No, I know, it's wild. The government is requesting the states give them money, but the states are like, screw you. We have our own problems. This is my example of the trade deficit. We are, right at the end of the war, we are importing way more than we're actually selling to other countries. So all of this is lost money. As you can see, Americans cannot pay off their debt because they are having to pay extra to bring in manufactured goods because we don't have a manufacturing economy because of mercantilism. I know. Now I ask you in the question, like why, what did I ask? Why was the government unable to solve economic problems? Because it was never designed to fix economic problems. It was never designed to be a government that ran or regulated the economy. So what we see is states begin putting tariffs on other states. States like Massachusetts are going to start putting taxes on imported goods from like New York. So the states are going to start taxing each other on selling stuff within the country because America is stupid. Yeah, we're so worried about short-term success. We have a huge lack of hard currency. There's no actual gold or real currency, but all we have is paper money, which is called soft money. And that makes it really hard to regulate the economy. And Americans still want British goods. British goods are cheaper. So America is not industrializing because that makes our goods more expensive. So people just keep preferring to buy British goods, which in the long run just hurts America's economy. Last problem, we used to sell stuff to the Caribbean because they were part of the British Empire and we were in mercantilism. But now England's like, screw you. You're not going to sell stuff to the Caribbean because that's our colony and you're not part of our country anymore, so you can go to hell. So England refuses to let us sell with the Caribbean colonies, so we can't sell our surplus breadbasket crops, we can't sell our surplus tobacco, etc. In the Caribbean where we used to. Connecticut charged higher taxes on goods from Massachusetts than they charged on goods from the British. My point about like these states putting tariffs on each other. The fact that we're buying British industry goods hurts the North. The fact that we can't sell our crops to the Caribbean hurts the South. So everybody's being hurt regardless of what you're producing because the economy is terrible. The other problem that exists is the articles cannot solve interstate problems, state against state problems, or foreign problems. Since we have not paid our war debt back, the British don't leave their forts in the Ohio Valley because we still owe them money. So we won a war against the British, and the British army is still there on our frontier. Question, can we make them leave? No, we don't have the power to make them leave. We don't have the army to make them leave. We can ask them nicely to leave, kind of like how we can ask the states nicely to pay taxes. But until you can force somebody to do something, so that's one problem. There's British troops in the Ohio Valley. Second problem, Spain's pissed off at us because we owe them money, and they close access to the Mississippi River. So now we can't ship our goods out via the southern port of the United States because Spain owns New Orleans, and New Orleans controls the Mississippi River, and now we can't get our farm goods out from the interior of the country. So Britain's pissed off at us, Spain is pissed off at us, and in the Middle East, Algerian pirates, I know, pirates, it's a real thing, off the coast of Africa and Europe are attacking and putting our American merchants in as Algerian slaves. Things are going really well. Things are going really, really well. And states themselves, like Ohio and Virginia, are fighting over who has access to use the rivers. Because each state is operating like their own little country, and they're competing with each other instead of working together in a big national system. It's going really well. Really smooth start. Congress and the Army are too weak to keep the British from keeping their troop service. We're just embarrassed with British troops hanging out on our frontier. We signed a treaty, John J. Gardagai Treaty, was met with regional resistance, and Congress rejects it, try to get the Spanish out of our way. You don't need to know all these specifics. You just need to know that foreign policy under the Articles is meaningless because we have no way to enforce anything. Got it. All right, I made slide everything against me today. And all of that, let's add some negatives to our list then. What are some of our negatives? Let's say this, the articles are terrible. Brainstorm me some negatives, because this becomes your thesis statement. What are some bad things under the articles? Trash economy. What else? Michael, what else? What else is a downside of the articles? What? Inflation, sure. How about state versus state conflict? That's a good one. The states are fighting with each other instead of working together. Foreign policy. Now we can't get rid of the British or the Spanish problems. War debt. What's another one? I took yours? I'm a thief. That's what white people do. It's called manifest destiny. Yes? Yeah, no protection. Good. Good. So all of these negatives are going to lead us to our spark points, which is going to expose to people how terrible this government is, and it's going to shift public opinion towards a more interconnected, strong national government system. And that's Shays' Rebellion. So there's a lot of tensions. I want to talk about long and short-term causes of Shays' Rebellion, because this is the third of our need-to-know rebellions. The first was Bacon's, indentured servitude to slavery. The second was Stono in South Carolina, our very important slave rebellion that tightens restrictions on slaves. Our third rebellion of the year then is Shays. And please do not write it like this, because his name is Daniel Shays, not Daniel Shay. See? Shays' rebellion. Sure, you did want to. So there's a lot of tensions, mostly because of the economy. Same with Bacon's Rebellion. When Americans feel like their government's not supporting them when they're poor, Americans get pissed off. It happens always. The Bonus Army, Bacon's Rebellion, Shays' Rebellion, next week the Whiskey Rebellion. All these rebellions happen when Americans are pissed off about their access to being successful. This treaty that doesn't get approved means all our frontier, our farmers in the West, can't ship their goods out via the Mississippi River, so they're having a hard time selling their farm goods. So they're having a hard time making money. Second problem, New England is going through, the whole region, a mini depression. So everybody is broke. Third problem are these mercantilist policies of the last 100 years. That means that everybody in New England's trying to do the same thing, which is create raw materials. And now they're competing with themselves in this economic system instead of working together in a cohesive economy. Fourth problem is foreign manufacturing competition. Who can manufacture goods cheaper, England or the US? They've been doing it longer. Right? So they're producing more of it, so their costs are lower. Next problem, our states are refusing to pay their debts, so the entire economy of the country sucks. So then there's no military there to defend us against domestic problems or foreign problems. All of this stems from what? The Articles of Confederation. The way we set up this government on purpose to not be able to do these things, and now when they can't do these things, we're like, oh my God, look at all these problems. This is terrible. Who created this bullshit system? No, that was us. And this is all going to come to a head or come to a spark or conclusion with Massachusetts farmers. These farmers in Massachusetts are in a lot of debt. And when they're in debt, the government is taking away their farms. So because they owe money, they're losing their farms. And it's not just that they're losing their farms, they're being put in jail for owing money. You with me so far? Yes. So they're losing their farms, they're being put in jail, and they're going to start holding meetings. This is what Americans do when they're pissed off. First Continental Congress, Second Continental Congress, Stamp Act Congress, House of Burgesses. And they're protesting how tyrannical the Massachusetts government is being in holding them and putting them in jail for owing money. It's not our fault we owe money, it's the economy that sucks. So eventually Daniel Shays is going to find 2,000 other men that are also pissed, and they're going to go and storm courthouses, shut down the courts that are putting their farmers in jail, and have this huge rebellion. It's a legitimate civil war in Massachusetts from the farmers and the rich ruling class. It's this huge ass chaos. And Massachusetts is like, man, we got to call the army. What army? Well, let's get an army. How are we gonna get an army? Well, let's hire some people to be in an army. And everyone's like, with what money? Because we can't tax people. So it's this, and I'll stop right here. It's this rebellion that gives us our eye-opening moment that, holy crap, this government is too weak to do literally anything, and we can't even stop a rebellion in Massachusetts. I will stop there, right on time. Here's your part 2 of your questions. For the rest of chapter 9. The rest of chapter 9, please give me 9.1 before you go. Yeah.
Attention AEC members, please report to room 110.
Yeah. Good napping, buddy. Sure to what? I'm not going to hit you in my lecture class. I'll just embarrass you. Chapter 9.1.
I didn't know.
Angel, thank you. Thank you. I should come. You know, I got a tutor and then I have to close the school today. So if I can leave by 6:15, I will. I will. If I can leave by 6:15.
British college or British territory. That's
Good job.
joint powers.
That's fine. Can you pull my USB from the left side of the laptop?
More democratic. West China economy. So they come by.
But they say
And there's
that
the deal that they signed that like
they say it's a part of China though, but
has to pay for it. It's like in 2047, Hong Kong was gonna be part of China, and like they were gonna lose their rights. And that's what China can start. It started because of like something that happened. That story in Taiwan. Taiwan.
Oh. Yeah, it's a receiver for the Clippers.
The girl was murdered by her boyfriend. But then he left because they were from China. They were from
So that's how they were.
He left her like over there.
I've never understood that. Some have like you got like a Bluetooth connection, but since I'm in like 2 different classrooms, I don't want to worry about like being connected to like laptops and whatnot.
They have to have the cord there.
And my old one has USB connection. We have Bluetooth.
But in Taiwan. Because that's what the crime happened. But since Hong Kong and Taiwan, their courts can't come together. And the guy can't force the guy to go back to Taiwan because of the connection. So what happened is that they passed the act where there was going to be a connection between the powers. But when they do that, it's going to create a connection between Hong Kong, Taiwan, and China. So then the people are supposed to
Trash.
China is going to have power over Hong Kong people. And they don't want
Trash.
setting an early date.
There's like 7 sections for each
Good job, man. Oh, yeah. No, I'm asking a lot.
You were actually playing? You were playing?
No, like I was just changing my username. Microsoft.
I connected mine.
Very verse, are you going home? Are you going home?
I don't know if I can make it everything.
I would always joke around.
No, don't risk it.
Yeah, I still cannot drive. What if I experience this while I'm driving?
Wait, what?
Which one is it?
I'll drive you home, no car.
Paralysis.
Take an Uber.
Are you taking? Are you going to
Go for it.
No.
I'm gonna.
I
mean, I already have like all other questions have
You are still unprepared.
then just like that. I'm not gonna take this. You see this photo? I fucking love this photo for my life. Yep.
Don't even have to show me.
I need a juice.
It's
Picture map? Quick picture map?
Photo man? Photo.
You want to see my character? For Minecraft?
You have Minecraft.
Who does he remind you of? That's the first thing you should ask yourself. Who does he remind you of? Oh, it's because I'm not connected.
Is that pocket edition?
I have a school Wi-Fi.
Of course you do.
So
Look at that. Oh no, but I didn't even see what.
I want to get a new right here. That's what case. I don't like this one.
Quick, Justin answer.
I will assure you. The question is in the packet.
Where's the shade?
Hey, this is my school. My school thing. Because I don't know
I'm forgetting.
The last one.
I connected it to my Xbox 360 account from this.
It's not the beginning.
So,
It's not the beginning.
and it costs $10 to change my name.
$10. Can you? But once you see my character, genius. Oh, I couldn't even remind you of his
That's even worse.
I cannot.
What?
Hey, Rivera, go home before third grade.
Make sure that you feel better before I leave. You don't wanna, you don't want this to happen. Both legs just stiff. You don't know, it's stiff.
Where?
Yeah.
That's only character you
Nah, dude.
have? You have all these characters?
Huh? It's not the beginning, so that's it. That's my
I
hit.
can't
It's not
mod.
the beginning.
Rivera, so no test?
But I.
So what is not the beginning?
So what I'm hearing is we're gonna make a whole.
So no test? If you
You
go
wanna
home,
make a new one?
if you go home, no test?
Wait, wait.
No.
Bro, what's the test on?
If you go home, no test. Just have it on Monday.
Graphic?
It's only 15
They
questions
have
for
mod
crying out loud.
What?
It's only 15 questions.
Oh, okay, that's what it does.
No, but.
No, yeah,
Hey, you forgot the video. It's still on.
Oh, hey, turn it up, turn it up. Hey, good. Is this a recording?